People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing, and it's totally true. And the reason is because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, if you're not having fun doing it, and you don't really love it, you're going to give up.
People want to be more like you.
Really?
So, and you know what, for the fate of humankind, I think it would be great to have more Elon Musks. So what do we need to do to become more like Elon?
I don't know if it's, I think it maybe sounds better than it is. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like there's a friend of mine who's got a great saying about creating a company, which is trying to build a company and have it succeed is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. So, I mean, what tends to happen is it's sort of quite exciting for the first several months of starting a company, and then reality sets in. Things don't go as well as planned. Customers aren't signing up. The technology or the product isn't working as well as you thought. And then that can sometimes be compounded by a recession, and it can be very, very painful for several years. So I think, frankly, starting a company, I would advise people to have a high pain tolerance.
Yeah. And thanks for reminding us of the harsh, very harsh and brutal reality of launching a startup. There is that Elon Musk / Tony Stark mystique. People think, you are, Robert Downey Jr. modeled his character, Tony Stark, Iron Man, on you. It's easy, it's fun. You're a superhero titan of industry. But it's really hard. It's really difficult. And it's something that requires perseverance and grit.
It is definitely true that, I mean, maybe there are occasionally companies that get created where there's not an extended period of extreme pain. But I'm not aware of, very many of such instances. So, but I do think that new great entrepreneurs are born every day, and we'll continue to see amazing companies get built. But I would definitely advise people who are starting a company to expect a long period of quite high difficulty. But I mean, as long as people stay super focused on creating the absolute best product or service that really delights their end customer, if they stay focused on that, then if you get it such that your customers want you to succead, then you probably will.
All right, you have to focus on the customer and delivering for them.
Make sure if your customers love you, your odds of success are dramatically higher.
People that look for great ideas to make money, aren't nearly as successful as those who say, okay, what do I really love to do? What am I excited about? What do I know something about? What's kind of interesting and compelling?
It's very rewarding when you work on something you think is going to make a big difference. And it's a little bit harder, but I think the passion that one might bring with it brings so much more energy to that you're more likely to succeed.
If you're not coming up with 10 ideas a day, that's why I have this thing. If I'm not filling up this page every single day, then my idea muscle will atrophy. And I started this in 2001, and I still do it every single day. Like, you have to come up with ideas every single day, or the idea muscle atrophies. The good news is, after about 6 months of doing that, you're like a machine. Like, people get surprised at how many ideas you could just have.
Don't necessarily think that you have to have the home run and the huge Apple computer on your first start. I spent a long time in my life with skills just building little devices for fun. For fun is one of the key things, because that drives you to think and think and think and make it better and better and better than you ever would if you're doing it for a company. Build things at first for yourself that you would want.
Don't think about how do I get big fast. That will happen if you actually build something super meaningful and super important. So don't think about, what is the quickest way to success? Think about what is the best way to building something important that the world really needs.
This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist?
And oftentimes the best methodology is to start with the perfect experience with just one person, get that right, and then figure out how to scale something great instead of scaling something not so great and then trying to improve it. That's really hard to do.
And so I think when you are starting a new business, you don't want to go after giant markets. You want to go after small markets, and you want to take over those markets quickly.
Constantly seek criticism.
Yeah.
A well thought out critique of whatever you're doing is as valuable as gold. And you should seek that from everyone you can, but particularly your friends.
Most startups that fail do it ultimately because they did not make something that people wanted. They made something that, that they thought people would want, but they were either in denial about it, whether it was actually any good, or somebody else came along and made something that people wanted even more.
But what you really need to do is think about what is the smallest possible test that I can run for this idea, for this concept, for this theory, get it out there, and get customers using it. Because your customers are going to be the ones to tell you if it's really working or not.
What this all comes down to is doing something exceptional for your users, whether it's in community, whether it's in connection, or whether it's in design. This is our big advantage as a startup, is that we can actually get away with doing this. We can make this the core part of why we're doing business.
I think you should be spending your money on teaching and sharing. And so that might mean hiring a writer or two, perhaps, instead of a marketing person. And start writing and start getting people to listen to what you're saying. You can't talk about yourself all the time because no one's going to come back for that, but you have to talk about things that are relevant to your industry or ideas that you have and start to build that audience up.
I do think that one thing that's important is, especially if you're a founder or a technical founder, is to realize that you can't do everything, and even if you can, you shouldn't.
You should find a great partner no matter what it is that you're doing. And you should look for someone who is very high intelligence, very high energy, and very high integrity. And you need all three of those, and you can't compromise on any one of them. Otherwise, you'll end up with either someone who's not smart, which does you no good, or someone who's not hardworking, which also does you no good, or the worst case is you end up with a smart, hardworking crook who ends up working against your interests. And integrity is something that takes a lot of time spent with someone to figure out.
A company is simply a group of people, and as a leader of people, you have to be a great listener, and you have to be a great motivator, you have to be very good at praising and looking for the best in people. People are no different from flowers. If you water flowers, they flourish. If you praise people, they flourish, and that's a critical attribute of a leader.
So I kind of half jokingly with a lot of people say that my job is basically to be the assistant for the rest of the company. My job is to make sure that you have what you need, that it's and basically you have everything you need
That's my job. If you don't have that, then let me know, because I'm not doing my job.
Another quality that I think is important is kind of being flexible-minded or open-minded. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a vision for your idea or your product, but you need to be open to changes.
So many things go wrong when you're starting a company, and often I think people ask, what mistakes should you avoid making? And my answer to that question is don't even bother trying to avoid mistakes, because you're going to make tons of mistakes, right? And the important thing is actually learning quickly from whatever mistakes you make and not giving up, right? And I mean, there are things every single year of Facebook's existence that could have killed us or made it so that it just seemed like moving forward and making a lot of progress just seemed intractable. But you just kind of bounce back and you learn. And nothing is impossible. You just have to kind of keep running through the walls.
Optimism has a place, but I think even more so for the first-time entrepreneur, you need to be pragmatically pessimistic. What I mean by that is you need to define all of the worst-case scenarios in terms of financial loss, time loss, etc. Look at what you will learn if that happens and accept and come to terms with that before you ever start. If you don't do that and you go straight into battling the world, trying to conquer the world with rose-colored glasses on, the first time you hit a major hiccup, you're going to become really demoralized and you will quit.
If you don't love it, you won't make it through the long period of pain that is inevitable. So make sure that you take care of yourself during the process. Make sure that you take care of your mental health, your physical health while you're doing it, because it's a long road.
Things expand to fully available resources, so then like sometimes you should say no to things that you don't. Like the original Falcon 1 team, which the fairing, tanks, engines, everything pretty much, was maybe a little over 100 people.
Okay.
Now SpaceX is like 6,000 people, I think, something like that. So really just simplify your product as much as possible. And then like if I think of some of the ways in which, how does a smart engineer make dumb mistakes, including, is optimize something that shouldn't exist. Don't optimize something that shouldn't exist. But people are trained to do this in college. You can't say no to the professor. The professor's going to give you the exam, and you've got to answer all the questions and give you a bad grade. So then you always optimize you always answer the question. A lot of the times you should say this is the wrong question.
Right.
In fact, the question is definitely wrong to some degree, just how wrong. And I think just generally taking the approach that your design is some degree wrong, probably a lot more than you think. Your goal is to make it less wrong over time.